Welcome everybody to week 3 of online learning. So today we are doing week 3, day 1, and this is over solving radical equations. So something new, we've been practicing graphing the last few weeks, so we're moving on now. We're going to solve radical equations. So first off, our objective of the day, we are going to solve equations with radicals. Okay, now, to be able to solve equations with radicals, we have to first kind of know what a radical equation is going to look like. So this first one here just says, solve the radical equation. So I want you to write it down. As you're writing it down, I want you to think about what you might need to do first. Pause the video when you need to. Okay, when we're solving a radical equation, it's kind of similar to when we had to solve quadratic equations, where we got the squared term by itself if we had that, and we could square root both sides and that kind of stuff. So here we go. I'm going to do very similar, meaning I want to get the radical by itself. Well, the only thing that's preventing that radical from being by itself is this 2 that's on the outside of that blue box I just drew. Okay, that radical square root of x plus 1, it's by itself, but that 2's in the way, so I have to get it out. Because it says 2 times, I'm going to do opposite. If you were thinking, hey, I would probably divide by 2 first, you were correct. Okay, so now I have the square root of x plus 1 equals 2. Well, now that I have the square root by itself, we know that the opposite of an x squared equation meant to square root. Okay, well that's the same here. The opposite of square root then means, hey, maybe I can square both sides. And just because algebra is a balanced equation, what you do on the left, you must also do on the right. Okay, so once I have squared both sides, I'm going to come over here, and I have x plus 1 on the left. Because a square root and a square are opposites, so they are going to eliminate one another. X plus 1 equals, well, 2 squared is 4. Now I'm going to subtract 1, and I have an x value of 3. Now something that is very important with radical equations is that we have to check our answers. And we have to check our answers because of something called an extraneous solution. Okay, so an extraneous solution is a solution that cannot be a solution. I know that sounds funny, but it is a solution that will not work. So what do I mean by a solution that will not work? So down here it says, example, square rooting to get -3. Okay, so what this means, if I have the square root of x equals -3. Okay, well, to get rid of a square root, yeah, I'm going to square both sides. And now I have x equals 9. Okay, but when I go back and check my answer here, well, the square root of x, or in this case 9, it can't equal -3. Now I know you're thinking, hey, what about the plus or minus? But we only add a plus or minus to an equation if we physically put the square root in the problem. When I wrote this original equation, the square root of x equals -3, the square root was already there. Okay, so the square root of 9 is just +3. And +3 cannot equal a -3. Okay, so it is very important that you check your answers. So what I'm going to do up here on this first equation, up here at the top, is I'm going to go back and I'm going to check 2 times the square root of x plus 1. Well, we got x to be 3. So 3 plus 1, will it equal 4? Okay, so we're checking, does this work? Well, I'm just going to simplify. Square root is kind of like a parenthesis symbol. 3 plus 1 is 4, so 2 square root of 4. Square root of 4, I know, is 2, so now this says 2 times 2, because this right here is multiplied. And 2 times 2 is indeed equal to 4. That is how I know that, for real, this answer works. Okay, now, if I happen to check it and it does not work, then I would say no solution. Not extraneous solution, but no solution. Alright, so here's a second question here. It's very similar. The only difference is a cube root. I want you to pause it here and give it a go. Opposite of square root is squaring, so opposite of cube root would obviously mean that you want to cube both sides. Alright, so first, to isolate your radical symbol, you do want to add the 1 over. Okay, when you add the 1, here's what you should have had. Okay, now, you do want to get rid of that cube root symbol. The only way to get rid of that cube root symbol is to cube both sides. Okay, after you cube both sides, you end up with this right here. Okay, now you're just solving a basic equation. I want to add the 9 over, and then divide by the 2, and we end up with 18. Now, I want you to check your answer off to the side. I want you to notice over here in my check here, I put the 18 in for this x here. Okay, but I want you to notice that I'm not resolving the equation. If I resolve the equation, it's going to tell me true every time. I am simply simplifying that left side of the equation, meaning I did the 2 times the 18 first to get to 36. Okay, after that, I did the 36 minus the 9 to get to that 27. Okay, then I cube rooted this 27, and that's how I got the 3, and then finally, I subtracted so that I got 2 equals 2, and I can say, yes, x equals 18. I am not resolving the equation. I am simply simplifying. Okay, next question. So go ahead and write it down, and then give it a go. Alright, so here it is. If I get that square root symbol by itself, I am going to subtract the 5. Okay, so that I end up with 4x, square root of 4x minus 7 equals negative 3. Then, from this point, I am going to square both sides of my equation. Okay, after I square both sides of my equation, I end up with this 4x minus 7. Okay, I am then going to add the 7 so that I end up with that 4x equals 16. And then divide by 4, so you can't see mine over there, so I'll just rewrite it over here. X equals 4. Okay, now I still need to go back and check. So when I input this in to check here, the square root of 4 times x, so 4 minus 7, then add 5 equals 2. Okay, square root of 4 times 4 in there, so 16. Remember, I'm simplifying. I am not going to resolve the equation. I am simplifying. 16 minus 7 is 9, so square root of 9 plus 5, will it equal 2? Square root of 9 is 3. Well, 3 plus 5 is most definitely not equal to 2. 8 cannot equal 2. That tells me that 4 is not an answer, and that this problem actually has a solution of no solution. Now, I did not even have to solve this equation. Some of you may have noticed that right at this point. Let me see if I can highlight it here. Right at this point, where you had 4x minus 7 equals negative 3. Before you even squared both sides, you could have stopped. Okay, because at that point, you had that the square root of something, ooh, let me get a different color here going on. Okay, so at that point, you had the square root of some number, or some, in this case, it was the 4x minus 7, equaled a negative number. Okay, a square root can never equal a negative. A cube root can, but a square root cannot. So right here, I could have stopped because a square root, I can't square root and get just a negative number. Alright? Hey, we got a couple more I think we have here. So here is this one. Write it down. Alright, on a problem like this one right here, we notice, hey, my square root is already isolated. That's awesome. Great. When we square both sides, it is important that we do it correctly. Okay? When I square the right side, pretty easy. I'm just going to end up with the 7x plus 15. Okay? What is not as simple is when I square the left side. Okay? X plus 1 squared. Remember, squared means twice. So that means I'm going to write this twice. And we are going to have to distribute. What I want you to do here is I want you to pause and distribute the left side together. And then you will notice that this equation will have to be set equal to 0. So I want you to distribute and set this equation equal to 0. Alright, before I had you do that, you probably wondered, why am I going to make you get it equal to 0? And at this step right here, where you had your x squared plus 2x plus 1 equals 7x plus 15, it should have been pretty evident why I made you set it equal to 0. I cannot just solve this equation for x like I normally would. Because of this x squared, and because of this term with the x in it, that means now we have to factor. Okay, so we got it equal to 0. X squared minus 5x minus 14. Some of us factored differently, but I can always break it down to how we did it back in Algebra 1 here. Okay, there is a 1 in front of that x squared, right? I am going to take 1 times the 14, or the negative 14 in this case, and we are multiplying to a negative 14, adding to a negative 5. Some of you may know the area model, and if you know what I'm talking about, then that is what this is right here. Okay. Factors that multiply to negative 14. Negative 1 times 14. That's not going to work. I have negative 2 times 7. That's closer, but I want 2 and negative 7, so that I end up with a negative 5. Then remember, you want to take these factors. X squared minus 7x plus 2x, and it does not matter the order, that just happened to be where I put them, minus 14 equals 0. Okay, group them and factor. At this point, we all should have caught on, oh, I know what we're doing. Okay, we've all been through part A before, so we should remember the factoring, take out the GCFs, and as I'm writing and talking at the same time, this all should be coming back to you. So that I end up with x minus 7 and x plus 2 equals 0. Very final steps here. I'm going to take that x minus 7 and set it equal to 0. The x plus 2 and set it equal to 0. So x equals 7 and x equals negative 2. Now I can't say those are my answers yet. What I want you to do is I want you to check both answers. So you need to check the 7 and the negative 2 and see if they work. Alright, so I checked both answers there. I got x equals 7 to work, and I got x equals negative 2 not to work. Now the moment that I got this square root equals a negative, I actually could have stopped right here and said no, it will not equal. Okay, but I went ahead and went all the way to the end to show why negative 1 cannot equal 1. We have one more question today, and I just gave you a hard one, so what I want to do is end on something that's easier today. This right here, square root of 2x plus 5 equals square root of x plus 7. A lot simpler here. I have a square root on the left, I have a square root on the right, and what I love about these questions is their simplicity in that, hey, I can get rid of the square roots pretty easy by squaring both sides. Okay, now I have 2x plus 5 equals x plus 7, and I want you to stop and finish solving that question. Alright, I got x equals 2. I want you now to see if x equals 2 works. Alright, x equals 2 did check out, so that is our solution. Hey, thanks for hanging in on this little bit of a long lesson today. The next one will be shorter. What I want you to do is I want you to make sure that you took note that this week, Friday is our meeting day instead of Thursday, okay? So Thursday, I cannot meet that morning. I will be available for any online emails and questions, but I will not be able to meet. So on Friday, I have set up a meet time instead. Thank you.